I'm gonna start prepping this rear bumper now. First thing I want to do is give it a nice wash because it's pretty nasty, and then we can finally assess and see what all of our damages are. Obviously we have the main big crack right here and also one right there, as well as some scuffs over here on this side all the way down. These carry a little ways back. And then also get this, the back side here, there's a bunch of sand and rocks and leaves in the inside here. While I have the rear bumper off, I also have the rear fender liners out of the car. Both of these are super nasty with a bunch of different sand all over them. Same process is going to be done on this rear bumper for these cracks as I did on the front bumper, which entailed basically me drilling out holes on each side of the crack, placing a zip tie, cinching it together so I can go ahead and that will actually pull the crack together. And I'm going to do that all the way up this crack. First thing I'm going to do before I do that is find the very end of the crack. Looks like this one's going to be right here. Drill a hole, and this will stop it from continuing on or going any further. So I'll do that on both sides. So it looks like the other spot's going to be right here, and then I have this crack here. So I'll find the ends, drill a hole right there, and it looks like somewhere up in here. This is what it's going to look like when you drilled out the holes. So we got a hole on each side matching up. If you'll notice, I tried to stay away from this crease right here where that bumper is, and that's because if you drill into this, you're going to have to repair that and round that out when you go to fill it in with that Bondo. So you want to try to stay away from any of these sharp edges. As you can see, this crack over here, it's very close to the edge, but I tried to stay off of it as best as I could. And that's just to make less work for me when I do have to actually repair this area. Looks like I only have one hole that's actually on the seam. All the other ones are just on the edge of it. So now we're gonna go ahead, take our zip ties. I'm gonna run these through the back side because you want this piece right here, the head of the zip tie, on the underside of the bumper. All of the zip ties on the back side are all loose. I haven't tightened them up yet. Before you do actually go and tighten these up, you want to make sure that this seam is exactly where you want it. And then once you have it where you want it, you'll go ahead and tighten them up from one side to the other. So you see how that just snapped into place, and that's kind of where I wanted it oriented. So make sure before you do tighten these up, I'm going to do these one at a time. I'm going to need two hands to do it, so I have to set the camera down. Once all your zip ties are nice and snugged up, we're just going to go ahead and take a pair of clippers, cut them off with, and you want to cut these off about as close as you can get to that actual zip tie. So I'm just going to start knocking these off one by one, and then we can move on to the next step from there. I have the bumper flipped over now. It's on the back side, so I'm looking at the back side of the crack. And to make quick work out of this, I have to prep this area right around these zip ties because I'm going to be applying the fiberglass, the cloth fiber, and then also putting the epoxy over that. So in order for that to stick, I have to prep the surrounding area for both of these. Now that this area is roughed up, I just have a towel here with some acetone. We're just gonna go ahead and wipe this whole area down. Same thing over here, get it nice and clean before we can actually go ahead and put our epoxy. While that backside's drying, I went ahead and threw some tape on all those holes with the zip ties that were through them. This is just so the epoxy does not leak through. So I have all my pieces that I want for fiberglass pre-cut up. I have 3 pieces. Basically, you want it big enough to be able to fit past your crack a significant amount, like an inch or 2 on each side. So I have this piece cut out for this. Then I'm gonna put this one here, and then this one all the way up. And these are definitely covering the whole general area here. So I think that that's gonna work quite nicely. I'm just gonna be mixing up my epoxy here. I was just reading the directions for this fiberglass. This came in the kit. So for 1 ounce of this, you're gonna use 10 drops of this hardener. I have a scale and a little cup out right here. I ended up doing 3.5 ounces of this. So that's going to equate to 35 drops. I just have this little foam brush here, and I'm just gonna dip this in the cup and initially get this first spot wet before I go ahead and put on the actual fiberglass for it to stick to. Go ahead, set this into place where you want it and kind of tack it down. Just make sure that you get it where you want it before you really tack it down, because once it's down, it's pretty much going to stay down pretty good. I'll go over the top a little bit, add a little bit more on these edges, so that way it'll fully kind of secure it a little bit better. You just don't want to see any spot that's white. That fiberglass could use some epoxy on, because it should be like a brown color. Looks like I'm about wrapped up here. Kind of got all the areas that I want, and it's looking pretty good. So we're gonna go ahead, I'm gonna let this dry. I'm just gonna let it dry overnight, and then I'll come to it in the morning and we'll see what we have then.